All right, the meeting is being recorded, Madam Chair.
That's me.
Okay.
All right, land use and planning, meeting in session. First off, reviewing the minutes, yes, read through those, all looked well. Thank you for getting those out in such a timely fashion.
Yep.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
And I'll second that.
Motion passes. Ordinance 911, second amended, we had a public hearing on it, we made some changes. This will be second reading tonight, and I don't have any other commentary on that.
Oh, is that the camping?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't see any.
And I think we made some
Looked at
good,
it a zillion times.
I think the proper edits were made, so that's good. Pasture lease discussion, do we have Dennison for that? I know he was gonna do,
He's not gonna be here, but it is in the
I
packet.
did see that.
So the thinking there was, before we run the ad, and I was just pulling up to look on here. Let me, pull up, the agenda. So we really, it's not in the action, it's just council business, so it's really, but what I had as my to-do was, before we run the RFP, make sure that council's happy with the lease that will ultimately be being signed out of that, and so that's just there for council discussion. That had basically the changes that Brian had brought up, so Brian and Dennison, Brian has signed off on those changes.
Okay.
There was some question about, do we put in max numbers, or for like how many head and whatnot? And it was basically just determined that because that can change so much with water and everything else of the year, that's why I went with the wording it was, so.
I liked that wording, I think that was good. But,
So I think what I will look for tonight, and in fairness, is not even, given that that's in the council business section, that's not really, an action item. Is that the action item will come in the future when you guys approve a lease after we put the RFP, but I'll look for a blessing from council that, yes, you're good with the lease, and go forth and run the RFP, and it'll run in next week's paper to do that. Did you guys have comments or questions on that?
so I did have one, and give me a second while I refresh myself on it. The fencing, so Brian signed off on fencing, saying that that is essentially the tenant's responsibility.
It is. The one thing that is not mentioned in there specifically is that the city has provided the materials
Oh, okay.
in the past, and that we would still continue to do that, but it's basically the whoever has the lease's responsibility
Maintain it.
to maintain
Which
it.
I think that's smart on I just was wondering if it was worth mentioning that there was already a fence in place. And essentially, this, and again, I come from residential world, so anyone can chime in and say, shut up, that's fine.
Shut up, that's fine. I just wanted to take you up on it.
Just in case.
No.
But
I'm kind of-
specifically saying like,
I'm kind of curious here, because the current people that are leasing it, a year ago, the city bought the fencing material for them to do the fencing, and it's my memory that they didn't do it.
I cannot speak to that. I know that it's their responsibility, and it may be, I mean, I know their
Yeah.
cattle are on it and not
Because
running
that's what he
free.
was saying. Well, it was,
who said that?
what is it, Eric?
Brian or?
Yeah, Eric.
Eric is one of the two landowners.
Yeah,
Okay.
Eric had said something, and I don't know, maybe for whatever it is, the adjoining property, they were gonna fence a line between them and the adjoining property, I believe, to the east. And they hadn't done it yet, is what he said, but it sure would be nice to know whether they have done it now, so that the fencing's only a year old.
Well, it's gotta have a fence because they have animals on it.
Yeah.
So it's gotta have a fence all the way around where their animals are.
But if they needed to re-fence it for whatever purpose, maybe it was inadequate.
Well, they're responsible for maintaining adequate fencing per the new lease.
Well, and I know, and, Mayor Cogswell and the city paid for the materials. So I remember that part. But I also remember Eric saying something that they hadn't done it yet, and I'm wondering if they did it this year.
I can certainly find out. My question is, does that factor into the lease or the RFP directly, or is it just a
It would,
morbid
it-
curiosity question?
It would if that fencing hadn't been done.
I don't necessarily think that it would. I think what it would be is before a lease is actually taken over, so say, put it in real estate perspective, to where we can both understand this. A door is missing, you're gonna have that door put back in place before the new tenant moves in. So I think that's more the question, if this lease says, like, you are supplied X, and you are to maintain X. If there's substantial damage from wind, rain, hailstorms, what have you, then it's the city's responsibility to maintain the structure. But it's the tenant's responsibility to maintain it due to wear and tear from their own personal use.
So it actually isn't the city's to maintain the structure. In this lease, it is the
It's them
property.
entirely.
It is them entirely. The fact that we may or may have not supplied materials to help ease their burden
Yep,
is not contractual, it's just the kindness of our hearts.
Gotcha. Okay, no, that's fine with me. That's what I was wondering. It's like, is this something that will be included as, this is one of the amenities that you receive, that you have this fence that is essentially provided and you are expected to maintain it? Or is there, this is what you get, if you would like to add to it, you are welcome to do so? And it's your responsibility to maintain it. Does that track?
I think so.
I think so. Like, I just want to make sure that I'm really
But
clear.
we can miss part of it, I think it makes sense.
No, I think that was only my question, is just, do we want to have, like, any sort of condition report upon, like, do we want to have any follow-up on that? Again, I've never done ag before, probably not something I'm ever gonna venture into, but I just want to get a perspective.
And I just wanna make sure that it was done, so that when we get a new leasing in there, they're not looking at that fence and saying, well, you want me to maintain it, but this is a piece of crap fence.
Well, then I would say that that's upon them to inspect and
Yeah.
look at it before they make the lease.
Exactly, that's kind of my thought, it's
Or
like, you
that's
get what
part
you.
of their RFP. I will do it providing you X, Y, and Z first.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I think that's kind of where I'm at, so. Okay, other than that, I think, I like the changes that were made.
And maybe that's how that RFP is going to read, is we will install the fence using the materials the city provided. That's part of the RFP.
Yeah.
When they come in for that, so there's still room to address that.
No, I'm A-okay with that. Again, I just want to make sure that when lease is signed, everyone agrees to, this is the condition, and when lease is over, that is the condition that remains.
Yeah, and like I said, my understanding is the whole purpose of this tonight is council wanted to look at that lease prior to us running the RFP.
Yeah, I just think we had a lot of questions on the previous lease that were not quite addressed,
Well,
and,
the previous lease was,
Very
Yeah.
bad.
But it doesn't matter because it's gone,
yep,
right?
now, there will be a follow-up action, that we need to do that also includes a notice of termination to the current leaseholder, because that current lease is an ongoing.
yep,
One of the problems in that lease is that it didn't have a 5-year sunset in it.
okay.
And so that will be an additional action item, and then action is, run RFP in the paper.
Now, where
No.
does it say that the lease is, the term? Okay.
Yeah, the previous
Also,
one needed
number
terminated.
16, treatment is misspelled.
Sorry?
Number 16, the word treatment is misspelled.
Okay, is that in the lease itself?
No, it's in the big letter, sewage treatment.
It is attached to
Is it in the lease or is it in the RFP?
It's in the lease.
It's
It's in the lease.
Okay, will you mark that up? Because we can modify that lease before it's, remember,
Yeah.
we're not taking action on that lease.
No, I know.
It's just, in substance, is it in line with what council will approve?
Yeah.
Get the approval of the body that has to sign off on it
Yeah.
before we do it.
Exactly, yeah. Don't sell something that you don't have.
So edit it, I don't have the hard copy in front of me, I'm sorry, but if you'll circle it with your red pen, then we can get that done. And that's where, and feel free to mention that tonight too, hey, there's some edits in this lease that need to be done, but
But just,
Yep.
Right, we're
substantively, I'm
basically
okay with that.
approving the concept
Yep.
of what
Yeah.
it is.
We agree with the terms, though it does need some fine tuning.
Need some spelling.
Spell check would be nice.
Minor copy editing. Okay. Are we all good on lease? Take that as a yes. Let's move on. Let's hear about this airport interlocal agreement.
All right, I apologize. So in keeping with the comment that somebody made earlier about we built our agendas a week ago, the agenda was built a week ago, and this document has not changed actually I meant to only print the first 5 pages of this. You actually already have a copy, but did you have the one that has the agenda on it too? This is the same as what you have, so I will keep a copy here.
Yeah, so that's current.
Yeah, well, so the problem is, what I'm trying to do, when I put this on for the public, and just so the public is aware, this is not, that we left this on the agenda so that we could talk about it. We had to evaluate what do we do, given that, what I want to do is basically make sure that we have a final copy that shows every markup and who did it. And there's 2 different documents that have existed, and when I did the markup, it wasn't quite working right. So I basically got to finish just merging to make sure that every change from the original shows up.
Awesome.
So as you go through this and look, this has most of it. There is on page, so anyway, the reason we left it on the agenda, even as if we didn't get to talk to it today, we left ourselves the opportunity of talk to it, because we thought, how are we gonna get beat up most by the public? And that is if we mention the word airport and it wasn't on the agenda.
Yep.
So it's on the agenda, this is here, it'll be on for discussion next week, and we'll make sure that these 2 documents are merged
Okay.
and available and out there so the public has the ability. We have copies here. If there's anybody in person, you're online, so I apologize it's not available
In the packet.
online right now, but that's just, we didn't want there to be multiple versions floating out there. We wanted there to just be the final merged document. And while there's not a lot of significant changes, what happened is there was some things deleted from this one, and then I switched over to doing a strikeout so that it was more obvious that it was
Good.
gone.
Awesome.
Plus some of them ended up being, oh, we really don't want to strike that out, there's a need. So like one of them was, the one that specifically comes to mind was the ability to acquire. And the airport board is really not going to acquire additional adjacent properties. It would be the city, so we're waiting for some wording on that.
Okay.
But basically, this will basically just show every single word and every choice. As far as what we were doing, that's the single page out front. This was the guidance that the council gave, and so when Jody and I sat down and looked at this back at the beginning of the year, and then what happened is summer, and we had stormwater and sidewalks and a billion other things. And so this has just not been the top thing on the agenda, but as we're winding up our projects, our goal is, I'd like to get this through this year with this council, mostly just to avoid the illusion.
Re-education?
Pardon?
Never mind, go ahead.
No, yeah, I just don't wanna give anybody the chance, oh, you waited, or you stalled, or you held to you, no. This has just been busy, let's get it done and taken care of. But the 4 things that council had put forth last year, and Jody helped me create this list, was that the municipalities, and specifically Red Lodge, should have the same representation as the county on the board. And so if you go into that, you'll see some wording that basically says, up to 9 members rather than 7. And it also says that the municipality shall have up to 3. And the part of that was the wording, Bridger was concerned if they could get 3 representatives, and our hope had been, our thought had been, and I still think, that they will be content with the up to 3, because they don't have to appoint 3 if they don't have them. But when we got their feedback back, there were actually only, after we waited, there were 2 changes. One, we're a town, not a city, so we corrected that in it. But then they said our preference is still for 7 members.
I was gonna say, this says 7 members, it doesn't mention 9. This says the joint,
Number
board.
3?
Yeah. joint board shall consist of 7 members
Then
as
I
follows.
I printed the wrong document then, but I
Okay.
didn't.
Oh, yeah, you got blue, I don't have any blue.
Yeah.
Dave,
Oh,
Doesn't have the right one.
Yeah.
okay, so
mine
I
says
just
the
printed
same.
the wrong one. That was the one that's the reason.
Yep, we're having on the agenda to mention that, hey, we're almost there.
Yeah, so anyway, it says 9, and I didn't see their comment. So yeah, when I pulled it up, the one that is included on yours. Oh, no, this is still the wrong one.
So, 7 members would be,
The 9.
That's wrong,
the-
that's
the-
what it was.
Okay,
The 7, which is what it currently is
And 9 is
3, 2, and 2. So the
Right.
reality is the municipalities actually have the majority if the municipalities are in agreement with each other. We have 4 and the county only has 3. But the council's going back to, so this part is correct. Look at this document, because this is.
Yep, okay.
This is stuff. So anyway,
so it should be made up from 3 from Bridges, 3 from Red Lodge,
And
that's,
the other
that's,
one.
that's what council said they wanted, and that's what's in the document that we have proposed and
and then
presented
the
to
county
the county.
commissioners.
And the commissioners.
Okay.
There is a change that is there, which is why I thought this was it, because it was in yellow. We added an additional change that said a quorum is not only a majority, but it includes at least one representative from each party involved.
That
So
would
in
be-
other words,
yeah.
you couldn't have like all of Bridger and all of the county show up and make a decision if Red Lodge wasn't represented. So we added that as an additional requirement for a quorum, that each entity had to be represented.
Okay.
Then the,
Did you address, whether or not they could do it, remotely?
it does not specify that they cannot do it remotely. That's something unique to the city because our charter specifies. So the assumption is that they could be remotely. If you don't specify they have to be in person, they can be there remotely.
Okay.
So, just to clarify, because our council guidance on this page, and this is all accurate, that number 1, we should have equal representation as the county on the board. So that's 3 and 3 for Red Lodge, and then if Bridger can do 3, they'll do 3, if not, they'll do 2. Is
Right,
that my
and-
understanding?
And so what I started to say is, the feedback we did get from Bridger is that they said still prefer 7. And so I need to have a follow-up conversation with Mayor DeRutter, because the way this is gonna, this is kind of like the union contracts, right? When we come in here, the council's job is not to edit this and change that and tweak that. The council's job is to say, we authorize the mayor to sign this, or we don't authorize the mayor to sign that.
Right.
Now, having said that, I have a list of guidelines that the council has provided that says, if you want us to tell you should assign it, you should address these things. And so I'm going back to Mayor DeRutter.
And these 4 things were actually last year's council.
Yes.
And we were all very, just so you, we were
Yeah, I
very
remember.
adamant
Yep.
about these 4 things.
I was there, I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was very,
And so I still need to have the follow-up conversation with him to say, how is there that I can meet this direction that I've been given by the council
Mhm.
and help you feel warm and comfortable? Because we thought the up to 3 would do that. And to be fair, his comment through his attorney was, we prefer 7. Okay, will your council still authorize you to sign it, and will you sign it if it says 9? My guess is, the answer is yes. You wanted to voice your opinion, we've heard your opinion. Are you okay that this is what I'm gonna present to council and what will make its way to you?
right. And then the second thing was very important to council too, which was that the airport board shall adhere to the master plan when approved to ensure FAA compliance. And the master plan will require approval, because the master plan will apply, council will have to approve that. But another caveat that is like, that we want the airport to be following FAA guidelines regardless, and hopefully they are. So, even if there's not a master plan in place, I guess that was the feedback from council last year.
So I'm gonna just add that word, shall comply with FAA guidelines in the interim.
Yes,
And I think, I don't have the right copy in front of me, but my understanding is that we did address that,
okay.
so that we will. Go ahead.
Okay, and then the third one was also very important to us, that there has to be a resolution by the county commissioners or the council to dissolve the agreement. We don't want just one,
Person to do it.
one
So-
county commissioner dissolve it, say we're done, we're walking away.
Yeah.
You know, you have to have that or if Bridger wants
It's,
out, they
it's
have
the
the
governing
council.
body of whichever
Right.
entity is wanting out.
Right. And then the fourth one is very easy. The airport board shall provide copies of the approved budget to the municipalities, so, just so we have a copy of it.
Yeah.
It's like our library board, I'm sure we give the library probably gives a copy of their budget to the county, even though the county's not approving that budget because it's under the city.
Yeah.
This would be similar.
And they do the same thing to us.
Right, yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, is there anything else that you all feel absolutely adamant about? Because those were the four things that we really fought for last year in that agreement, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that I was reading, and again, this isn't the final copy, is just what happens in the situation of that pollution, like making sure that bodies are covered. And the municipalities, the county, whomever, like, there's clear guidelines for what it looks like, so.
And so, and like I said, this is not gonna be our official council discussion today.
Yep.
But we chose to leave it on the agenda so we could have that conversation, and I would point out, Madam Chair, that you've got at least 2 online folks that I would anticipate, that is why they're here, if you wanna solicit audience input or get audience feedback.
Yeah,
And I said, and we welcome any and all, but again, this is not up for action tonight, it's not even up for action next time. This is just, we didn't dare talk about the airport without advertising high and low that we were gonna be talking about the airport.
any public comment on that online?
Can I say something?
Yeah, you sure can.
Yeah, okay, this is Jeff, 516 North Hauser. On the FAA guidelines, I don't know, terminology is super important, maybe Steve can talk to this, but the master plan would be submitted, we would be in the airport improvement program, assuming that it's approved, accepted by the FAA. It might make more sense maybe to talk about it being the airport meeting FAA AIP standards or something to that effect rather than just guidelines. Steve, do you have a comment?
No, I don't know that it's that critical exactly how it's worded.
Yeah, however
The
it's
intent
worded,
is,
yeah.
I think is
The,
correct.
And however-
intent that I heard, from council, and I don't think I expressed it accurately enough here, so I can tweak this before we present this to the public next week, is not just, the reality is it's not necessary to say, we'll adhere to the master plan and AIP requirements when we're accepted, because we don't have a choice. That's Uncle Sam who's gonna come and
Right,
tell us.
yeah.
But what I heard is, we want to be managed by the AIP standards until, or even if we don't get that, we want the still same level of compliance, and the idea is just to not shut that door for us, or what's the logic behind it?
I think it's just to ensure, to help, I don't know, if you follow those FAA guidelines, my understanding is that it will help limit the liability factors, because you are following a set of guidelines.
Okay?
I don't know, I mean, I'm open to hearing other opinions on that, but.
No, I think that if we're gonna have an airport in our area, they should be absolutely following the regulations of the FAA.
Just one comment on this is we are currently in what's called an NIPIAS, which is an acronym meaning we're an FAA airport.
Okay.
The fact that we're applying to get into this AIP program is in addition to that.
Okay.
So I think,
And maybe you already are doing most of.
but yeah, we probably are, but I don't see anything wrong with.
There is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
there is
No, I
a
think
more
that's-
strict set of guidelines once you're in AIP and you become what's called federally obligated.
Okay.
They get to be even bossier than they normally are.
Okay. So
Yeah.
however, you know,
I just wanna ensure that it's operating safely
and
and
professionally.
professionally,
Yeah.
and that the proper rules and the proper channels are being followed, because again, something outside of my element, but
Yeah.
I just
And we
assume that,
we don't want to helicopter this or nitpick it, you know, I mean, we
No.
we just want it to
No
be in
pun
place,
intended.
like you guys,
Ah.
yeah.
Sounds like
I know.
me.
But at the same time, you know, just, we've written it in there.
I think
and-
it's smart to just have mention. Again, I'm a firm believer of good contracts keep good neighbors.
Can I ask one other thing?
Yes,
I don't know which version of the interlocal resolution you're looking at. It sounds like there's at least a couple versions that are out there. I'm looking at the one that Dave, you passed to Steve recently.
That
And-
one is the accurate one.
we have the
anyway,
inaccurate.
and there may be other of these little artifacts that came out of the old resolution that I reviewed quite a while ago. And it's absolutely a nitpick, but on item 10, the title still has a portion of a word in it. In the title, it's like, oh, disposition, oh, after termination. It almost sounds like you're about to sing something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
That's in number 10?
yeah,
Okay.
there's an O there.
And clearly that is in the original because it's still here.
yep.
And there might be
Yeah,
others, that's the only one I
Of
noticed.
property, not of
Double
property.
check. I keep telling you guys, double check.
It's hard when it's done in all caps, it doesn't always take spell check.
Really?
Mhm.
Oh, I've never
It
seen
doesn't
that.
spell check if it's all caps necessarily.
There's a checkbox that you can tell it to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm gonna say, but it doesn't necessarily always do that, so, again, don't hate too hard, we all make
And again,
mistakes.
a reminder, Jeff, we will get this document out to the public, next time as well. So that, and at that point, any and all nitpicks are welcome.
Okay,
It might
good.
might be beneficial when doing these, I was actually having this thought today with resolutions and all of those, having a
But the
date
example-
stamp at the bottom of when that last was
I know,
updated.
absolutely.
In the other document, there is.
Sure.
And then just another thing, because we do get a lot of, about the lease, I know we have not changed the lease at all that's attached to this.
I saw that.
And we just need to make sure that people realize that that has not been up for review at this time. And,
And it's my understanding that the board actually had a couple changes they want to make. The new one does state very clearly, and to be fair, in my interpretation, the old one basically said, airport board, this is the lease you get to offer again and again and again. We have made that even more clear here that says, you get to do this lease unaltered, you don't get to change the terms, you don't get to change the price, you don't get to change, because that was one of the triggering events that kind of raised this to a head. It was certainly what provided a grip for somebody to get in, and so we're just making that, just kind of like the resolution thing, theoretically, that should have already been there, but the request was to spell it out just so that there's no confusion.
Yeah.
And we have extended the language that says, this is the lease you get to offer. And so what happens is, let me give you an example. So like right now, it's a 20-year lease. One of the proposals I think they came in the past was it's a 25-year lease. The only reason they get to do that is because they present a new lease to all of the municipalities that are involved.
Mhm.
Or in our case, it's actually the city of Red Lodge, because it's our property. We would like to modify the lease and hand it out with these terms, require everybody to paint their door pink. Then council would say, yes, we agree, that is now the lease you can hand out. So if the lease changes, council has to sign off on that.
Okay,
So the lease that are the attachments on here, this is what you get to hand out, this and only this.
Mhm.
If you want to change it, you come back and we'll sign off on it or not.
Yep, love that.
So this lease says it's a term of 20 years.
Right,
Correct.
and that's what's currently in, so that is the lease that they can do. So if they wanted to change that in a year from now or 2 years from now, or as part of this operation even, they would need to come back and say, these are the changes we want to make. Council would have to sign off and say, yes, that is the copy of the lease you can hand out.
So, Sandy, what's part of this is that is the lease that's in effect. It was last approved in 2012.
Okay.
so, just a quick question, who is actually going to be setting the price of the leases? And how will that be determined in the future?
That is it, so the board makes their recommendation in their lease and what it's being charged,
Okay,
and then the county, or the, excuse me, the municipality approves it and says that. So I was on city council the
Mhm.
last time we approved this, so I was thinking there's been one since 2012, but I remember specifically because I asked, where did these numbers come from? Because these are lower than what I have paid in other states or this, that, or the other. And they, at that time, came back and said, we did a study, here's where we are compared to Montana. We're not the most expensive, but neither on the cheapest, and we are above the 50% line. And I said, therefore, I feel like I fulfilled my obligation as a councilman to ask the questions.
so
And
how
then that's what
often
we
do
approved.
will they do that?
That's what I was gonna ask, is how
Mhm.
frequently is this gonna be reviewed?
Right.
And when it's reviewed, is there an amendment that's sent to other previous lessees, or is,
It would affect future leases written.
Only,
Okay.
it'd be grandfathered in.
Okay.
If they've signed.
So
up,
is
they have
that
a
an
20-year
additional
lease,
comment that's on there that we want? I don't remember seeing that it says lease rates will be reviewed every 5 years or anything like that, but in specific, I wasn't looking for it,
Yeah.
right?
No, I don't know,
I was
and,
looking for the
and
stuff
I'm-
that council guided.
and, you know, just, you sign and I'm just kind of going by property leases, if you sign a lease, it's set for, you know, right now it's for 20 years at that same rate, is that, should it be? I mean, I'm okay with the 20-year lease, but the price maybe should change as
Agreed.
the,
5 years.
And I asked that question when I was on
Yeah.
council too. I said, is there an escalator built into this?
yeah,
And is that escalator driven by the cost of inflation, or is that, my recollection, and Steve, you maybe, my recollection at the time is that they said no, and my job was to ask the question, and everybody else said they were fine with it. But we could certainly build that would, to me, be inside of the
well,
lease.
it would
Yeah.
also, it would give some accountability for those leases, because that's really the biggest complaint that we get, is that we're giving away land, and I want the data to back that up, that say, no, it's the same, you know, we're right here, you know, and we check it, how often do we check it, and,
yeah.
yeah, Stephen?
I'm sorry, so the current language, this 2012 language about that says the lease rate may be reviewed annually by the board
Okay.
during their regularly scheduled budget meeting. The rate may be adjusted at the sole discretion of the board based on the Western Consumer Price Index, surveys, and local factors.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
So
That's
they're
great.
basically doing that repair.
Perfect, love that.
What's the header on that?
Oh,
Rent.
That's in,
Rent's an
it's on
exhibit
the
A.
first page
Of the
Under
lease
rent.
itself.
Yep,
on the lease agreement.
On the lease.
Yeah.
So it's appendix A, not in the MOU
So,
portion.
if
Got it.
lease rates go up, it goes up for everybody then, is that correct? Not
Yes,
just, okay.
yeah.
That's,
So,
I guess that was.
that's what I'm reading is
Okay.
if we
Yeah.
change the rate based on inflation and comparing to all the other airports, it
Everybody
applies to
pays the
everybody.
new lease.
Yep.
Ah,
cool,
Okay.
no,
And
I love that.
And it puts them in charge of that, so we don't have to worry about it.
Don't you think there should be something in there that, if in fact you're going to raise the lease rate, that you need to give the leasee a certain 60-day notice or something? There's
Sure.
something in there about that.
But that would be-
Or
or
do
would that be
do
enough?
they have notice, because it's in the lease they
I was
signed?
gonna say, that's the lease, isn't that be the notice right there annually?
Yeah, you
Well, it's like,
signed it,
okay,
that
well,
you're
in
okay with it.
January, it's 10 cents a square foot, in February, it's 20 cents a square
And it-
foot, and you, it's like, well, what?
No, I agree with you on that, but I do think that right now we're focusing on the interlocal agreement, not as much the lease.
Yeah,
And the lease is something that I think is up next for review.
But I think the lease
Thank you.
should, I think, and I don't have an objection to the lease being part of this.
I just know we're gonna get questions on it.
Yeah, oh, 100%. I'm just saying, like, this is kind of where.
And
thought
maybe
process
we
lies.
just get rid of the word that says may, and say it shall be reviewed annually.
Okay, I think we need to sit down and totally redo this lease at some point, so after,
Yeah, let's
Let's
get
do
the
that
interlocal
interlocal.
in place.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to reading the actual copy.
I apologize.
Yeah.
I just, it wasn't here, that was, and again,
And,
Because the
we
right
left it on the
Yeah.
agenda, so we had the option of talking about it.
no, I appreciate
They
it.
pulled up the wrong one when he.
Jeff, did I hear you online? Did you want to say something more?
No, I do, but I was just laughing at that last comment about, yeah, which one are we reading here?
Yeah.
Yeah, if I may, I do have a question about real property and, the exhibit B. And currently exhibit B is just kind of shows the airport subdivision, hangar subdivision, and only a portion of the rest of the airport. when the ordinance is finally passed defining the boundary as it will be amended from the previous ordinance, would that ordinance be referred to either in 5 here or in Exhibit A, along with the actual pictorial representation of the boundary? What's going to be in Exhibit A?
Exhibit A, from what I understand.
Oh,
at
wait.
least-
I'm sorry. Exhibit B, I mean.
Exhibit B, so if I may, what is currently on, so the last council did pass an ordinance which requires 2 readings of what the new airport map is. And so it reduces the boundaries significantly. However, there are some things that I think we can do to improve upon that. Having said that, I don't think it's a separate decision by council, not the same. And from a high level, my concern with the existing ordinance, the existing map as it passed, is on the north and east boundaries, AKA the town side of the airport. There's a line in the dash that was drawn around, and my understanding in talking with individual members of council who are involved with that decision is that the goal was to protect the trails by excluding them from the airport. There is a concern or a problem in that we do not protect our city easements and our road in that example. And so that was a limitation and concern that came up from the folks working on the master plan, and the county had also raised that. We do not account for the fact that road has a 60-foot easement on it, which is not represented in the drawing. I would propose that what we do is that we parallel to this. It's just, but it answers Jeff's question about what goes into the B, is that we modify that to on the north and east sides to say it follows the road, but it includes recording easements for the trails, public utilities, and the road, because then that basically covers all of the road stuff. So it may still be within what is deemed the airport, but you look at the road, you say, that's the airport. The fence is gonna be over there because we're not interfering with trails, we just record the easements as part of it. At that same time, we modify the west boundary, which right now has a jagged out for a corner of a runway, that the reality is not a piece of runway that's going to get used a whole lot, and practically speaking. And I think it does more value to the city to make that a continuation of all that parking space over there, so when we have large events, it's there.
Agreed.
Now,
That makes sense, so this
Yep.
line,
would basically be straight along the west
Instead
side.
of the
Yep.
And so, to me, if we redo the boundary, I would say we're addressing both of those things. But if council says, no, we don't wanna do that, there's already a copy of the ordinance passed, and that's just what we stick in here. And again, that's council's decision. I've made my recommendations based on conversations and the little bit of expertise that I bring to the discussion. But the reality is, when you come down and land on a crosswind runway, this is gonna be below this level, this is gonna be below that level. I'm not gonna come in and land there just to go hoink, and then land on the other side. I'm gonna land on the other side of that anyway, and vice versa. So why not take this big chunk of land? Since we're trimming down the airport to that which needs to be maintained for airport operations, let's take that out. If we're going through the process of adjusting this anyway, and by the way, this is all stuff that I think has potential future value to the airport, and there's all sorts of compatible uses.
Correct.
We've had everything from pickleball courts to you name it suggested, parking, whatever. Those are all compatible uses. Those don't interfere
With the airport.
with airplanes.
Dave?
But we also don't need that right there.
I agree.
Yes, sir, Jeff?
Are you pointing to the area south of the spoon factory and over to the,
no,
No.
I'm not sure what you're pointing at.
he's pointing to the fence line on the west side of the airport along.
Oh, okay,
the road
all right.
On the rodeo grounds, continuing to the north up to the double dog park parking area.
Basically keeping the west side as a straight line.
Got it, I got it.
Does
I
that
have a
prop-
question about that area south of the Spoon Factory and south of the mooring hangar up over to, South Airport Road, and what's the intent there? Do you have any
Why don't we-
idea?
Should we, Sandy, do you have a question?
My question is, the crosswind runway,
Yes?
is the reason why it went that far because it has to be a certain length?
No.
No, this is actually the original runway. Going back in the day, so what's really funny historically,
And then they
this
put up.
paved runway is actually the new runway.
Okay.
It used to be that this and another one that's actually not showing up on here is what the actual original runway was.
Okay.
If you go back and look at pictures from the thirties and the forties,
Okay, so it's no big deal to cut it off and make it a straight line?
Correct.
correct.
Okay.
And the reality is, if you're landing on a crosswind runway, it's because the wind is so strong, which also means you need less runway. So the stronger the wind, the less runway you need, and if the wind isn't that strong, land on the other one. I don't mind a little bit of a crosswind.
You might not.
Any
Good one.
respectable pilot went. So, but anyway, just because Jeff mentioned that, I was, now going back to Jeff's question, I would say that we just stick to this fence all the way around. So to your point, Jeff, the Spoon Factory is not, so the Spoon Factory is not part of it, nor would it become part of it.
I wanna make sure we're
So-
talking about hardwood when we say
Yes.
Spoon Factory,
Yes.
thank you.
Steel plus one.
So what was your question there, Jeff? And I'll do my best.
Well, there's been some talk about adding the ground, let's just say it's a square bordered on the west by the existing, the existing east fence, east of the main runway, the paved runway. And the south, border would be South Airport Road. It would go over some distance east, towards the intersection of South Airport Road, White Avenue, and Airport Road. And then at an angle, go off to the northeast, and then join up, with the perimeter, basically, that would be around the private property that's Earlywood Spoon Factory.
And that's actually that's what's already included. That's the ordinance that was passed at the end of last year. The recommendation that has come out since then is, rather than going with obscure lines out in the middle of the field or even barbed wire or fence lines, go with the most permanent and least likely to move landmark, and then put in the appropriate easements around that.
Okay, so the trail would end up getting an easement on it.
The trail would be quote unquote within the defined boundaries of the airport, but it would have an easement to protect it, so the fence would have to be inside of that, so you weren't interfering with that.
Okay, got it.
Do the three of you understand that?
Yep.
The trail is.
So the trail comes down, right?
Right there.
Yeah, right in there, so that's gonna be protected.
It was my understanding from listening and reviewing the council notes and talking with council members, that there is a very specific desire to make sure that we protect the trails
All right, yeah, they.
that
there's a lot
are
of
there. And the easements was actually deemed the best way to do that. The current protects the trails, but what it didn't protect was the road and the bits. And this is actually wide enough that it's a problem. And so if this is 60 feet, okay, this run-up area has to move to this side of the runway, for instance, to do that. And that's okay, but here is the road, and we have a 60-foot easement on the road that's there. But if that's what the goal is to protect the road, to protect the trails, then say that.
Yeah.
Build it in and just don't be abstract and kind of, just say, here's the boundary, but there's a road, there's a pipeline, there's a future pipeline, there's
There's utility easement.
yeah.
So you have utility easement, you have a road easement, you have a.
But that will be, and we'll try to have that out for this as well, because
Okay.
it's already done. But that will be a separate action, separate from the MOU.
Do we
Okay.
need any other utility easements? What we have there, is that sufficient?
I believe so, but we can always look at it, and
Isn't
my,
there a water tank there somewhere?
there
Because we wanted
used
that
to
out of
be.
it.
Yeah, and that's on the other side of the road,
Okay.
so that is out, because that was one of the other things, there's currently a water tank that was inside. By the way, the one that the council passed last year has not been signed off on
I knew that.
by all the other agreements. So what's technically the airport right now is still what's on file with the FAA
Right.
since 1956 or somewhere abouts there. So that's technically the airport as far as the governments are
Still.
concerned.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like we have an interlocal agreement that we're very close on.
Yeah.
Once we get this final
It,
copy,
we will have it for discussion
next
next week.
council.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And by the way, this is one of those weeks where we have,
We have a 3-week.
we have the beloved fifth Tuesday in the month as well as the fifth Wednesday, so we actually have 3 weeks until our next meeting.
Because I'll be gone on that fifth one.
Yeah. Well, it won't
So-
matter, you can't.
So we
That's why I
have
did
this in place. We're gonna work on getting a map to go along with it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
The lease,
and there's a
I think
footnote that says the lease still should be revisited.
perfect. And I think if council wanted to present any notes that they have for that lease, that we can essentially do the same as the guidelines piece, that we can send off, I think that would be smart. But as for now, I'm not gonna get too deep in the weeds of the interlocal agreement until I see a final copy. Just good for reference, and I think it's good that we spend the next couple weeks looking it over, getting familiar with it. And if we see any big notes for the new one when it comes out, we make note of that. But,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
may I ask that we specifically, I think we've got another member of the audience, I would love to get some input and comment. I see Kristen on there. Kristen, do you have anything you wanna, I'm sorry, Madam Chair? Hey, we were shouting.
Kristen, Mayor Westwood would really love your opinion on this. Going once?
If you're,
Hey,
okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so, I'm all in favor of the airport, but, my primary concern is for the city. We're talking about, cutting police force. We're talking about raising taxes, just from other meetings. And I see this as a beautifully designed airport with not a lot of regard for the city beyond the trails. I'm very apprehensive about, I haven't heard anything from any legal authorities. No offense to the mayor, but as a pilot, there's a bit of everybody who's doing this has a conflict of interest. Both Jody and Chelsea have said they don't really know a lot about this kind of thing. I don't think any of the council members know a lot about this kind of thing. For myself, I would just prefer that it be part of a big plan that incorporates the city with it. I live at the end of 19th Street, and there are a lot of planes taking off. I've heard that there are like 12 new hangars being planned. I think there were 5 new hangars being built this summer. I don't know what the capacity is for aviation so close to town. I see a lot of airplanes that aren't following the rules. I know one of those hangars is being used for storage. I know there's another hangar that is a living quarters. There's just a lot of things out there that I would just want more expertise on. And it's going to go the way it's going to go, but these are a 20-year lease is a long time. And I just wish that there was another way to do it that was more comprehensive for the city's needs. But I very much appreciate your consideration and your thoughtfulness, because I think you're trying to do a good job.
So what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, potentially some sort of regulatory body that isn't necessarily people that don't understand all the rules and regulations that go into FAA, to make sure that they're doing the right things with the planes flying correctly, because it sounds like you say they're not doing it right. Again, I don't have the expertise to say whether or not that plane is flying too low or has the wrong colors. I can't speak to it. So I'm curious if, in terms of the interlocal agreement, the board would be the regulatory body, And those would be our experts that we have chosen to do that, and they're elected by the city, they're elected by the county, and they're elected by the municipalities. I shouldn't say the city, municipalities.
Appointed.
Appointed. So we have folks that are appointed that we consider to be the professionals, and we have trust in them to be that regulatory body. I understand a 20-year lease is a long lease, and honestly, my gut reaction feels the same way as well.
Except that these people are building a hangar,
Yeah, and,
and on city-owned land at the end of the lease. If we chose not to renew the lease, the hangar becomes ours. They're spending a lot of money,
For the
and a 20-year lease makes sense.
and honestly, to me, the reason a 20-year lease feels too long is not necessarily the use of the space, because I particularly believe that we should have an airport, but specifically, it's the rent. Like, I want to make sure that we are staying up to terms with standards, and if we're having an annual review, that I don't necessarily mind that 20-year lease.
Right.
And that was
And
my concern.
again, if they're also gonna be having to follow FAA restrictions and regulations, and we have a regulatory body who can actually essentially call them out on it, or potentially make the phone call as needed, do you not feel that's is sufficient?
No, no, it isn't sufficient because it isn't done and it hasn't been done. For instance, another problem is, yeah, they get to build a hangar. I can't build a hangar, but they could build hangars and sell them at profits on city land. That's not something that I get to do or you get to do. There's no one else in Carbon County that gets storage for that rate of pay. And I don't have the answers, but I don't think it's that wise to compare them just to other airports, because every airport is got a different situation. But if you look at the need of Red Lodge, the city of Red Lodge's finances, I just think there's a better answer that will serve both better. But it will take time, and maybe a moratorium should be put on building any more hangars, because they're going gonzo up there building hangars, and that's probably the best real estate in Red Lodge. It's just those are my concerns, and I've heard a lot of other people speak of those concerns. So I mean, I would just take a step back, and I think there's grants out there for master plans, and I would get someone who can speak on behalf of the city. That's one of our community entrances. And how is that going to be developed? Because, for instance, your lease language, I just heard Steve read it, and it's solely by the airport. But 10.5 cents is a very good example of how good the airport is going to raise those lease rates. I know that the lease has been changed and issued already once, and I believe it was retracted. Are all these leases going to start a new 20-year term? Because I think that has already been done too. New leases have been issued, and the term was started again. So they gotta get another 20. I mean, it's like the cat watching the mouse. Or the whatever that expression is. But I just there's a lot going on here that I wouldn't feel comfortable with. I just think that in order to do it and do it right for such a big amount of city land and such a lot of people who are, as you say, building up there, I just think that a lot more expertise on behalf of the city would be wise. Conflicts of interest is a big thing. Is it okay that the commissioners are on the board? Is it okay that the pilots are on the board? Because it's fine for maintenance, but I probably should not have appointed 2 pilots to be on the board. In hindsight, I would not have done that. I think those are all issues that you should look at and talk to a legal person about.
I believe that there's been multiple lawyers involved in.
There's three attorneys who've read through this at one point, and I think one of the questions that's come up, when is one person's conflict of interest is another person's expertise they bring to the situation.
That's really the
That's
problem.
really my personal belief on it, is that I would rather have professionals and people that understand that these rules and these regulations and the full process being the ones that are actually working on these documentations, because you could have someone who has zero conflict of interest, but also zero understanding. There's a reason I wouldn't be on this board.
Or me.
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah. but
Have
the public doesn't know about any of these other legal opinions. There's been nothing given to the public. There's been no public meetings about the impact. I don't know what the status is of this master plan, but if the city had a master plan like the airport is getting, it would really be a neat thing. And I mean, you can say anything you want, but unless you have that expertise and that legal opinion, I mean, I'm just saying, if you do it right from the beginning, it will benefit the city and everybody else in the long run, so that we can have a more cohesive understanding. How many airplanes are we going to have flying over Red Lodge? There's a lot of things like that.
Kristen, we're running short on time, but I believe that I hear what you're saying. You would like a little bit more transparency of how this was come about, and perhaps some sort of presentation brought from legal counsel of why these decisions were made as a starting point. I hear a lot of other things.
This is not the last of this conversation. This
is just the
conversation is
start.
almost the pre-conversation.
Yeah,
So, and the master plan is being worked on
Right now.
Growth policy.
Yeah.
No, I mean like the growth policy.
The growth policy.
The planning board is working on that right now.
And this MOU is getting in the way of the
Growth.
uncertainty behind the MOU is getting in the way of the master plan, so.
And it clearly states in here that the use of the premises are for storage of aircraft storage, maintenance, and activities related thereto. So that's it. It doesn't say you can live there, because they have no water or sewer, so.
Some of them do.
So the bottom line is it can't be used that way. It clearly states in the lease.
so basically she's saying that there should be further regulation on the folks that are using it.
The people
We should
that-
have more transparency for the community of how these decisions were made. Perhaps there should be some sort of opportunity for a hotline, perhaps, to submit complaints or, issues with the airport. And in that regard, if there's too many planes, if you feel like there's something that's being broke within this interlocal agreement or through FAA rules, there can be some sort of follow-up from that board.
Well, how many aircraft?
Kristen, I hate to cut you off, but we're
No,
3
that's
minutes
fine.
out.
No, that's fine. Thank you for,
And again,
Thank you for
we'll
your
have
time.
more conversations around this as well, so. Okay, so we're getting into that, we're gonna get a lot deeper into this, and I think that we can have, again, more public commentary. I like the idea of having some informative meetings of this, and really making it super crystal clear for the community when they can arrive for these, get some more education on the subject. And again, I would love to have some of the professionals in the field speak out on it as well. So that, I think that's,
I would also.
Great
like to-
recommendation.
To know what the FAA guidelines are
Yep.
on people occupying the hangar, because I know that they do allow for pilots to spend, to have like some type of sleeping quarters there for pilots that are
yeah.
flying in, so it's, but, I don't know what those FAA guidelines are, so.
Yep, it'd be nice to have,
It'd be nice to know what's
I'm
allowed
sure
and
there's
what's
been,
You
not.
can
but-
talk to the group that's doing the master plan, the
Yep.
airport master plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna have all that information.
And that's why why we as council last year, because we didn't know what those were, just wanted that followed. So
Yeah.
that we weren't saying, you can't do that, and FAA is like, we don't care.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly, so,
Or vice versa,
I
you
think
can do that, and FAA is like, no, you can't.
They are our-
I did not. So real quickly, you guys, just so we can wrap this up, because we're at 4:43. I think that we do have some other pieces that we let's make note. Can we put it in some sort of, email thread, something that we can provide guidance to beyond, how we want the next steps of this to look? So now that we have an interlocal agreement in place that the community can review, we'll create some additional steps that we can follow through on as council
We
members.
don't have an interlocal agreement yet.
No,
Like
again,
what
we
we
have a
a big-
draft copy in place
There's a
that will be getting brought out to the public by the next council meeting.
Is that true?
That's what he
Yes.
just said,
Okay.
yeah. So, on that note, we did not get to a resolution directing the planning board to address and consider RV parks. I think we can definitely look forward to that. Planning board updates we'll also get to at a later date, especially regarding the master plan and the growth policy. And then obviously, we still have some standing topics for future discussion that are nonetheless important, but we do have some other pertinent details that we're working on right now. Is there anything else that would like to be said from the community and other people on this Thank you.
This is a point of order, since you didn't get us with everything, you do
I'm
have
not
to have a
done yet.
motion to adjourn.
I did not adjourn.
Wait, we opened it for public comment.
Okay, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I second, let's,
Okay,
next.
on time.